both my brother and I were sitting down at the kitchen table and we're eating like ramen noodles and cut up hot dogs. And then as soon as we go upstairs, we hear, phew, and later found out that it was actually a bullet that came through the back patio where we were both sitting. So he may not be alive. I may not actually be on this podcast. And one thing is that in that setting is you had to figure out a way to earn money, which I took the legal path.
Welcome to the Real Estate and Financial Independence Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach, and this is a show all about helping you get out of the financial grind so that you can do more of what matters. Whether you're a brand new listener or a longtime listener, thank you for being here for another episode. The title of today's episode is a 12-year journey from financially broke mixing cement to financially free with rental properties. This is an interview with my friend Sterling White, and it's really been a lot of fun for me to get to know Sterling. And this story is incredible. He grew up in Indianapolis, and I'm not going to go all the details of the story because he's going to share that. But the basics were he grew up in poverty. He was on welfare. He lived in Section 8 housing. He had a single mom. He had one brother, and just really had some forks in the road that he talks about, some decisions he made. And I just found it fascinating, some of those milestones, some of those places in his life where he made certain decisions. But we talk about mindsets, we talk about mentorship, we talk about who you spend your time with. And this is applicable whether you are a young person kind of growing, coming of age, or whether you're just trying to change where you're going in life and change the types of things you're accomplishing. If you feel like you're kind of in a rut. But really the details of this story, we kind of get into the high level mindset type stuff, but we also get into the practical details of how did he actually find some of the first money to do his deals. When he was mixing cement, working in construction, he had no resources. How did he actually start buying properties? How did he find the people who could supply what he didn't have? And then we talk about some of the deals he found and the numbers and how he found the money and how he found the deals. He's really good at finding deals and putting deals together. Plus, he's just a funny guy, and we had lots of fun talking. So I think you'll enjoy this interview with Sterling White. But before we get to the interview, it's time for my weekly behind-the-scenes segment where I share a short snippet of what's going on with me and my real estate investing, my finances, or my business behind the scenes. And as some of you might know from listening to prior episodes, my business partner and I are selling off a couple of properties. Now, we've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years now, so this is nothing new. We're keeping the large majority of everything we have, but we do pick a couple properties and say, all right, this doesn't fit the core of our portfolio, or there might be some reason we just want to sell it and kind of turn the equity over or do something different. In this case, we have a particular commercial property. Now, most of what we have is small, like houses, small multifamily properties, some apartment buildings. That's our sweet spot. We really like that type of investment. And so this commercial property was an opportunity that we found back in 2015. It was brought to us by referral from another local real estate agent who just didn't want to deal with it. They had a tenant in there who was not, say all the details, they had a tenant who they knew and they didn't want to deal with it. So they sold the property to us to let us deal with it, which we were happy to do. We've been renting that and had some ups and downs with commercial tenants. It's actually a good investment in a lot of ways. It's gone up in value, a couple $100,000. The tenant just pays for everything. It's a net lease, so they pay the taxes and insurance. They do the maintenance. So a lot to like about it. But it's also, if it becomes vacant again, it's just not our sweet spot. And we have the opportunity to sell it. So we've looked at saying, all right, what would happen if we sold this property? And the lesson I want to share with you, the thing that was a repeat lesson that I've learned in the past, is when you go to sell a property, if you want to make the most money possible, and that's a big deal. When you've owned a property for a long time, how can you sell it and have the largest net profit from selling that property? And the lesson is always talk to the neighbor or talk to your tenant about buying the property before you go out and put it on the market. You have to find, list it with a real estate agent, do all that. You do want to know what is the market value of the property. You don't want to underestimate that. But I have found multiple times that we've been able to get the best deal possible talking to the neighbor, talking to our tenant. And in this case, we did both. And we have not sold the property yet. We're about to get it under contract, but we're probably going to sell it to our tenant. But we kind of got a little bidding situation between the next door neighbor who liked the property too and the tenant. And the reason why, think about it, like with a residential property, for example, your next door neighbor might be emotionally attached to being able to control who owns that property, or maybe they want to expand, or maybe they just want to have a little buffer around their property. So sometimes they're willing, it's worth it to them to pay more than anybody else would to control that property. For a tenant, they're already there. They're already invested in that property. They know it. They like it. And for them, buying the property instead of renting it might be a good deal too. In this case, it probably will be. And so I just want to, for all of you who are considering selling a property now or eventually someday, just plug that away in your mind. This has been a repeat lesson for us to really get top value and also add a lot of value to your tenant or to your neighbors. We've sold lots and lots of houses to our tenants, and it's been a really satisfying thing to do. So that's something going on behind the scenes with me. Hopefully that little story has been helpful for you. Now let's get started with today's interview. Hey, Sterling, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, well, appreciate you, Chad. Us now officially getting on the same page. All mistakes on my end, but we are here and we're making things happen.
No worries. No, the backstory that we've had a couple attempts at making like our schedules work, and we're both like doing these digital like detox things where we're like not looking at our phone, we're putting them in drawers, but that has sometimes the adverse effect that we're like, oh, the calendar reminder is not there either. So
yeah, I don't check my emails until noon, but I was like, oh yeah, we're good.
It's all good. So Sterling and I, just quick backstory. I've been looking forward to this because Sterling, I've known about Sterling, I've known about his work and appreciate it. He teaches a lot on Bigger Pockets. He's got a big platform there, and has also done a lot of good work, just teaching, just consulting with people and helping people with real estate investing. And we got to meet at Bigger Pockets conference this last year. That was fun. We got to hang out.
Big Pikachu. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We got some inside jokes now, but it's been a good time getting to know you, Sterling. And I really wanted to share your story because not only your knowledge and your expertise is amazing, but I just want people to know kind of what's possible and what they can do and kind of start thinking bigger. And so I want to talk about your business and negotiating and buying properties, which you're really good at, and how you've bought single family houses, how you bought multifamily properties. But I thought it'd be cool just to start from the beginning. I want people to kind of know where you came from, where you grew up, and then let's go from there.
Yeah, so I grew up in the not so good parts of the city of Indianapolis and on welfare, food stamps, Section 8 housing, single mother, fraternal twin brother. Some people say we look alike, but he's as dark as Wesley Snipes, so I don't see it. He's not that dark. But
both good-looking guys then, right?
Yes,
Wesley Snipes was the man back in the day. So
yeah, he was. I think he's somewhat coming back. But yeah. But it was very tough living in that upbringing because you never knew if you would live the following day. And there was one point in time where both my brother and I were sitting down at the kitchen table and we're eating like ramen noodles and cut up hot dogs. And then as soon as we go upstairs, we hear, psh, and later found out that it was actually a bullet that came through the back patio where we were both sitting. So he may not be alive. I may not actually be on this podcast. And one thing is that in that setting is you had to figure out a way to earn money, which I took the legal path of in my this was elementary days and middle school, as I figured out, I started selling Kool-Aid and then Pokemon cards. And so essentially fast forward, got started in real estate 2009, in construction with my friend's dad's company as a laborer. And then I just started doing researching and coming across better content and as far as changing my mindset. And I saw that the utmost wealthy and rich did not get that way by being laborers. So I started buying single family, bought 150 and then started buying multifamily where it got up to about 500 units.
Wow, that's a quick version of that story. So good, like beginning to end. I love it. I want to dig in on something that you said because, sitting there with your brother and, eating the ramen noodles and the hot dogs and then just like realizing where you were at that point and what some of the challenges were. But then like, what were some of the, like, obviously you had something in your mindset that like kind of pushed you in certain directions. Was there a mentor? Was there just your mind, just something you read? I mean, I'm just curious because you got a strong mindset. I'm just wondering kind of where some of the seeds of that started.
So it wasn't always that way, Chad, and it was a multitude of things, but it just happened to be where I was at this college party doing what college kids do, having a good time, and I end up drifting away from the crowd, and I'm out in the middle of this boat or canoe, whatever the difference is between those two, and then out in the river, out in the middle of this pond or lake, whatever the difference is between those, and this question comes down to me, Chad, and says, Sterling, is this what you want to do with your life? And up until that point, I was just drifting into average land. I answered back, no. And then that's when I started rewiring my frame of thinking. I started to listen to the Earl Nightingales, the Jim Rohns, the Zig Ziglars, the Tony Robbins, and I had to remove a lot of the garbage and limiting beliefs that I had to start replacing them with more empowering one. And one of the biggest beliefs is that, one, I control my own destiny, and that whatever happens on the outside it's still under my control, is how I react or have to navigate. And then also that I am enough, because on a daily basis, I had people I woke up to that said I wouldn't amount to anything and that I would just be another statistic.
That mindset of that limiting belief, that either you're not enough or, that you can't do something, from kind of outside in mentality. Like, a lot of people have that. This is something that we all have to overcome. Like, even getting to the point where you at that party, like I'm thinking about my own kind of life too. And I played football and kind of went to school to play football, but there's like, what were some of the decisions that even got you to, like, you called it average land, but like even getting to college, like, I mean, there's a lot of us who don't, that's an aspiration. I'm just curious, like, did in high school, were you thinking about that, like kind of like just going that path, getting a college degree? Like what was your mindset at that point?
I was just following the masses. I didn't have college or anything that was really pushed up on me, but I just saw what was going on around me. And that's actually one of, now over the years, I've started to just become more aware. I don't want to say the word woke because, throw that around now, but I would say just more aware to actually be a thinker. And I've cut out the media. So I haven't watched the news. That was another key thing I did in my early 20s, was cut out the media. That way I don't have someone that's constantly delivering this certain message to me on how to think. So that's what I would say is really helped me tremendously with overcoming a lot of things. And I still have some of those as far as if I go in I just started boxing, for instance, and I'm a little hesitant about getting in the ring and getting knocked out. And so
I understand why, man. I played linebacker and I had a helmet on, and that was kind of like, that's easy. Get in a ring, man. You get in a ring with people hitting at your head. I mean, that's a whole nother deal.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be that extreme, but that's just one of those things. Is just me building that confidence. But I would just goes to show that even to this day, I'm not perfect. I've overcome a lot of limiting beliefs, but I'm still constantly pushing just to become the strongest version of myself.
I love it. Yeah. So feeding your brain with things. I'm the same way. When I first got out of college, I started reading like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Tony Robbins. I mean, I was like anything I could get my hand on that was related to your mindset. And it's almost like you're thinking about your brain like as a computer, and you have this like kind of, you could pull some of those programs out, but they're pretty tough to pull those things out. But it's like,
yes, exactly.
You got to repeatedly think about it and decide, all right, here's what I want to program my head with. And then it's not easy. Like you got to repeat, you got to journal, you got to think about it a lot. I mean, it takes years and years and years, and then you relapse and you go back
around you too, because you can easily go back to those thinking. And I mean, unfortunately, my brother ended up taking the common path and being another statistic, and now is facing a hard time due to the decisions that he's made because he ended up going back to that environment. When I decided to take a completely trajectory in life and this is the unfortunate, and I'm not saying this is for people to do, is I had to cut people out of my life. I completely cut people out of my life. And I'm not saying for people to do that. That's just one of the things that helped me tremendously, because I didn't want to go back to that frame of thinking.
And for better or worse, I think this is a Jim Rohn quote, which you said you read a lot of, is that your average of the 5 people you hang out with, whatever category you want to think about, whether it's your wealth, whether it's your weight, whether it's your level of fitness. I mean, it's for better or worse, like that's the way it is. You're going to kind of, your peer group's going to rub off on you. So I get that.
Yeah. And it's the same. I was just out at a EDM concert recently in Austin, and I was okay with EDM, but is with that, the people I was with, is I would say, oh no, I don't want any candy. I don't want any it was just a natural habit when they would offer it to me. Like, dang, Sterling, I don't even want any of this now. And they did eat it. So it's the same example, is that you just by watching people and being around them, or if you're at a dinner and everyone asks for dessert and you're the one that passes on it, then everyone's like, well, I guess I'll pass on it too. So that's how easy it is.
No, it makes sense. So going back to real estate investing, hanging out with real estate investors, I've always been a big fan of like local meetups or the Bigger Pockets online forums, but just from what we're talking about. Like it almost raises your level just by like seeing like, oh, really? Sterling did that? Like, oh, wow, Chad did that? Like it's like you start like saying, okay, well, I think I could do a little bit more just by like hearing people's stories, and it rubs off on you that, real estate investing is possible. You could buy properties. Like that's part of it. It's definitely part of it. Just hanging out with people who aspire to those kind of big goals.
Yeah. And you realize that these people are just, and I've heard this the other day, is that, okay, if that person can do it, I can do it. Once you actually are in that person's environment and you hear some of the things they're saying, that, well, they're still figuring it out too. Yeah. And of course they may have more knowledge and their terminology that they use, but when you're having these conversations, it's very basic level conversations, not basic level, but you get what I'm saying, to where you're like, well, yeah, that's simple.
Yeah, people who have success are not like, I mean, sometimes they're brilliant, but I wouldn't call myself brilliant. Like, it's just like sometimes they've been a little further down the road that you're trying to take, and if they're humble enough, they're going to admit that, like, all right, here's all like the 20 mistakes I made on this road. Here's my scar. Here's how I survived. That's pretty confirming to see that somebody who has, quote, success has also screwed up a ton of times. Like, like allows you a little bit more leeway, right?
Yeah, but many people don't see those mistakes. I mean, we have people such as yourself, Chad, that shares those mistakes, but we're in the social media age, and I know we were talking offline about the whole detox. I'm not even on social media anymore. My Instagram's deactivated just due to some of that's a whole nother conversation, but it is just the instant gratification and the highlights that many people don't see. That for your journey to become a linebacker at Clemson is, I know that you had to put in the work to, did you start there too, Chad, or were you?
Yeah, I started for 3 years. I was the middle linebacker. Yeah, it was tough.
So yeah, all those times where you had to show up early to go to the weight room, all those hits that you had to have, and just injuries you may have to still end up battling through. So a lot.
Well, it definitely explains a lot with my brain now, all those hits I took in college. But now Sterling.
Yes.
No, there's no doubt though. Like, and so, I mean, that time when nobody's looking and it's not fun to show like 3 hours of grinding, working out on social media. That may be the most boring YouTube video ever. All right, here's Sterling doing his 500th push-up. Like, all right, I gotta change this channel. I thought you did one arm pull-ups. Wait a minute, you do one arm push-ups too?
Yes. No, one finger pull-ups and one arm push-ups.
If you had an Instagram channel, you could check it out, guys. But
no, you'll go there. It'll say pages broken down.
Pages broken. Yeah, I tried. Yeah. No. So I want to go back to that moment when you got into that construction work, and I'm just so interested in the details of how. The reason I'm asking so many questions, the details of how people take steps, and sometimes they're like steps that are going to be the next step. It should be the next step, and you got into construction, and I'm just wondering, were you interested in real estate itself, just building, or was it just like, all right, I'm just going to do something that is going to make me some money?
That's what it was on how I started. I was a college kid, broke. On my roommate, we shared, he owned the actual house, and I was one of the ones that just paid to live there in one of the rooms. So I was paying him a portion of the rent, and he saw that I had some free time, and his dad owned a construction company. He said, yeah, we can need some help. And that's how I got my foot in the door. But when I fell in love with real estate and really enjoyed it was on that first construction job that I worked on, which was pretty sketchy, on the scaffolding that he had set up. He was so cheap. He didn't put boards on the upper, but learned a lot from that. But is seeing the finishing product from working from day one or at the very beginning stages and then seeing it to the end. That's what I really enjoyed. But mixing up the mortar and that grind work for sure was not for me. And then that's when I started coming across people like Robert Kiyosaki and just saying, okay, how do I become more of a investor? Because that's where the wealthy ultimately start to pick.
Love it. So you were mixing cement and you were getting up on shaky scaffolding, and then you saw this finished product, this physical, tangible piece of real estate, but it kind of sparked this idea that, hey, somebody owns this, like somebody's making money off of this. And that was the spark. So take me from that, like, and I think everybody can appreciate this. Like, you have this moment when you're broke, you're a college student, you're getting into construction just to make some money. How do you go from that point to where you're actually doing some of your first deals? Like, what were some of the key steps looking back that like got you there?
So I did find a mentor, and that helped tremendously. And this was someone that I was working out at a CrossFit gym, and I was bartering my way to pay for CrossFit because I was broke at that time. And then I cleaned around the gym to exchange for my membership, and I was training for a world record. That's probably a whole separate conversation. And there was this person I formed a relationship and never thought one day that they would be my mentor, because you think you're paying about $200 to $300 per month for CrossFit. So, and it was downtown. So the type of people that were in that setting were people who worked downtown and were very affluent and had some cash, but a good network to be tapped into. So formed a relationship with this individual. We would always go to the library, listen to Earl Nightingale, and we just had common threads. And one day I overheard his conversation with the owners of that CrossFit gym, because he was a member, to do a build out on as far as building out their expansion of their gym. And I approached him and said, hey, well, let's go ahead and go to Subway. Would just like to further talk about how I can help you within your business. And then as we sat down there, as I said, here's the kicker, Will, you don't have to pay me anything. I'll work for you for free. And then that's when he took me under his wing.
Love it. I love that free proposition. I've often, when I was first starting, I thought about the same thing. I offered the same thing. Like I'm enthusiastic, I'm knowledgeable, and I want to learn from you and I want to work for you. Here's what I'm willing to do. And if you frame it right, I mean, it's a good opening proposition, right? Like you got to have some sincerity behind it, so he said yes. He said, let's go.
Yeah. And he just happened to he was older. So he was in a position to where he could actually do that. And he saw something in me. And this was not something that happened over a month, or I just approached him the first time. Is we had been working out for 5-6 months together and just talking about self-development, and the opportunity just presented itself. And it was pretty much an easier ask to go about that.
So you decided to go help him like project manage, or were you helping him do some construction? Like what kind of stuff were you working on with him?
I lived in one of his apartment units, so I'd wake up, clean around. And then also in his property management office, I was essentially the not messenger, but whatever was needed as far as, okay, Sterling, I need you to be able to go to this resident, deliver this eviction. So I would do all those jobs that were needed. But what I really brought was creating more of a digital presence to his units that needed to be rent ready. So I would go take pictures, I would take video, and then I would post those online. So that's what I really brought to the table. And then lastly is he was looking to diversify from multifamily to single family. Interesting, normally it's the other way around, but he didn't have the time to find the deals, but he had the cash. And I had the time, but I didn't have the cash. And then that was the biggest value exchange.
Love it. I love to see in the granular how this happens. And, going back to your working out with somebody, like I've always found, like I love playing pickup basketball. I'm not, I've heard other people do this with golf, but you can tell a lot about somebody when you work out with somebody, I think, or play sports with somebody. I've always found like, I have a lot of friends who play basketball. Like, all right, that's the guy who's got the hot head and he's going to have his temper, really fast. That's the guy who,
those are some great points, Chad. I never even considered that.
Yeah. So I'm willing to bet, like he saw your work ethic. He saw you're trustworthy, you're dedicated, you show up on time. Like there's a lot of things you can learn working out with somebody. And then, so you were listening to, you had your mind right. You were listening to Acres of Diamonds, or you're listening to like, all the classic Earl Nightingale stuff, so that when you're
Strangest Secret.
Oh, exactly. Strangest Secret. So I've still got those tapes back there somewhere on my bookshelf back there.
Oh, you got the tapes?
I got the tapes, man. Somebody gave me like the tape set. I don't even know how to play them anymore, but like I got them.
Some people may be like, what does he mean by tapes on there?
This is a little plastic thing. Oh yeah, whatever. But anyway, you were ready for your moment. Like I just want to emphasize that to people that, luck happens. Like we all get lucky. You happen to be working out with somebody, but like the things you had been doing before, like that moment in college when you decided, I don't want to be the average. I want to actually like improve myself. I want to do something different. Like it probably didn't look like you were doing much for that period in between, but like all of that preparation was like, you're getting ready. And then you see it happens. Like you just took advantage of your opportunity. I just think that's so important for people to point out, because those opportunities aren't always obvious. Like you don't know, they might be a workout buddy. It might be like a basketball person. It might be somebody at work who you just have a conversation with, but you were networking, you were feeding your mind the right stuff. You were working hard. Like those are the ingredients. Like there's nothing like fancy about those, but that's what you were doing.
Yeah, and you said the definition of luck with the combination of things that you did said was when preparedness, you talked about preparation, and then you said opportunity. So it all came to fruition that, yeah, it may seem luck that all that came together, or someone may say it's luck, but was preparing up into that moment, and then the opportunity was there, and I was able to be ready for that opportunity and seize it.
Got it. So you went to this stage where your mentor and now maybe your partner is wanting to buy single family houses. So I'm assuming, like, fast knowing your story now, that you went out and helped together buy some houses. Was that? Can you tell me any more about that kind of next step from there?
Yeah, so ended up getting this one particular deal that came in through a wholesaler. And this was actually when in 2013, 2014, where the deals actually penciled out from wholesalers. I mean, you can still get some good deals, but
Yeah.
the deal came in. It was $25,000 was the purchase price. 15,000 was the rehab. And for those of you who may be in California, maybe in New York, this was a C property. It was not a shed, by the way. They're thinking a house for $25,000. It's in a working class neighborhood. So I approached him with the deal. He said, yes, the numbers make sense. And then that's when he funded the purchase price and said, okay, Sterling, go figure everything else out. As far as he still looked over my shoulder, but that is the best hands-on real world experience I was able to get from managing the title transaction with the title company. Managing the contractors, which were his more so his maintenance team, and then also doing the leasing. I was leasing this when it was about 65%, 70% completed with the rehab. Bad idea. And then also once got tenants in there, they actually moved out 6 months into the lease, moved someone else in there, didn't even let us know. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just simply have to get them out. No, you can't just do that. You actually have to evict them. So all these things that I ended up, and I started using this knowledge, being on bigger pockets and figuring out, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then applied it, and then it just snowballed from there.
It's like you probably learned 4 years of college in like 3 months or 1 month of just doing it, like on that one deal, right?
That's exactly what it was. And then, I mean, due to that one deal, I had a full head of hair, but for everyone who's on there, it's all gone.
They're watching it on YouTube now. They know why he's Wesley Snipes didn't have hair, did he? Like, did he shave bald? Like that was,
No, he had hair. He
Did he
still
really?
has hair too. Yeah, he did.
Wow.
I'm thinking
Okay.
of Blade because Blade had the,
All right.
yeah.
There's some famous people with nice bald heads. I mean, it's so you got the famous looks.
Jeff Bezos. I
Jeff
mean,
Bezos. All right. Yeah, that's true.
That's
true.
the top of the top.
All right, yeah, that's some that's billionaire with a big B, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So I mean, that single family house, we already talked about the relationship with a mentor. Like that's a key thing. Not only like advice, knowledge, but he's willing to put up this 35, 40 grand on a deal. You know, what would that property rent for? Do you remember what the total
It
rent
was
was?
825. So was
strong.
able to hit the 2% rule, which I mean was using, and this is one also a lesson learned is yes, rules of thumb are good to use, but in that case is let's say the property taxes were higher, or let's say that there was flood insurance, but 2% rule is still, you couldn't go wrong with that. But that's one thing I also, as a learning lesson, that you want to use calculators. At that time wasn't using calculators, so didn't understand what are exact cash on cash, and then also what our annualized return would be as far as building that out on a, let's say, a projection.
Yeah, like I said, you had that 4 years of college on deal analysis, on tenant screening, on tenant management.
Oh, for sure,
remodeling.
tenant screening. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
Big one, right? Yeah, I've been there too. I had the property I'm thinking of. I bought the bad property, or it was a beautiful property. It had this view of the mountains, but then it was right next door to a drug dealer. And so I couldn't get anybody like who wasn't a drug dealer to move into our property. And I was just like, let's just put somebody in there. They have like 3 months of rent, you know, and then that turned into an eviction, and it took forever and had to bring the sheriffs out. Like that was my worst property ever. But the like moral of that story, similar to sounds like what it was just screening tenants, like just learning that skill alone. If you're going to be a landlord is like for me at least, that's like rule number one. You got to learn how to screen tenants.
Yeah, and one thing I would want everyone to get as far as a takeaway on here, and glad you went into that chat, is that yes, you can learn from your own mistakes, but where you get the true someone who's wise learns from others. And even you'll still hear the mistakes and then you'll still do them. You'll be like, oh man, that burns. And then that's when you'll go ahead and just start to put more thorough screening in place because you don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. We're all going to make mistakes, but you don't have to make the same mistake I made and Sterling made, right? You can learn from our mistakes too. And that's the way you should do it.
And avoid the bigger mistakes, which are ones such as not over leveraging your property. That's one. And then most of the things majority of people would do when the crash happened, then they had to give back their properties. So those are the ones so I mentioned about not putting too much debt onto your property and not raising enough money to take care of improvements. Because if you're raising money on a deal to take care of improvements, then that affects your cash flow. And you say that, well, I'll just be able to take it out of the cash flow to take care of improvements. I did that, and it does not translate to actually real world. And then others made that mistake. But luckily, and this is why I want to share this too, is that when sold that property was at the height of the market and did okay. But just think, if the market had a downturn and tried to sell that property, then we would have been, so it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah. I love to dig into that deal. I think I know the one you're talking about now, one of your multifamily deals. And so let's pause that one for a moment, because I want to fast forward in a second, go from single family to multifamily. But I want to go back to this, like the situation you had with a mentor, with a partner. He's basically putting up the cash, and then you're his partner to buy the deal with him. Is that basically how it worked for you? I'm just, because people are going to probably wonder about the structure.
Yeah, I was more of the sweat equity, where on that deal was 90% went to him, 10% went to me. So we did several deals, and then after that we went our separate ways, and I started another partnership with Jacob, and that's the company that ended up scaling the 100 to 150 single families, and then started buying the multifamily.
So you learn those first few deals. You now know how to find deals. You know how to manage a property. You know how to manage a remodel. You got all this knowledge in your head, and you got your confidence. And so you start this other partnership, and from there, like, tell me a little bit about what that looked like, because you scaled. You just said you went to 150 single family units. Like, how do you, like, what were your thoughts then? Like, were you planning that out? Did you say, this is how much I want to buy in 1 year? Like, I'm just wondering what the transition was.
So the first that really helped for that partnership is that I remember Jacob was on stage with his mentor, the person he was working for at that time, shared his story. And for some reason, I was like, I've got to work with this guy. I don't know what it was in particular, but ended up following him into the bathroom. Yeah, gave him the pitch and said, hey, we should work together. I was super aggressive. Yeah. But turns out he said, yeah, let's swing by the office. You can do your thing, I'll do my thing. And then we started seeing each other, similar to what you were talking about, people working out. We saw each other's worth ethics. And then we started working together. At that time, we still didn't form a company. We started doing some wholesale deals, and we're like, I plugged in his ear, let's go ahead and start something. But what I really saw is that our skill sets were complete opposites, meaning my strengths were his weaknesses and his weaknesses were my strengths. So that was what allowed us to scale so quick. One of the things. And then also he had relationships with friends and family that were able to provide the capital. But I would say another one is we had patience, and myself is I just put in the work from 2013 to, I kid you not, up until this point, or 2020 is all a blur. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or I just literally just really put my head down during that time.
Yeah. You've been hustling, you've been doing deals, and I want to, what were your strengths at that point? Like, and I think this goes back to a lot of what I've seen with deal making, I assume, but like, what were the things that you felt like, hey, I'm bringing this to the partnership. This is something I really got.
So being the face of the company, contributing to bigger content marketing. That's one thing I picked up reading the book Jab, Jab, Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. And then also 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. So literally took the content marketing, pushing out value. And then Grant is that what in 2014 is, as you're aware, that the amount of contributors on Bigger Pockets was not how it was now. So I was able to, and then also the processes and things that you have to go through. So I was pushing out 2 to 3 blogs per week. So that allowed me to really push through the noise and create a brand. So that was one thing that helped was content marketing and being the face of the company, and also the deal acquisitions as well were my primary focuses, and then bring on investors through the marketing.
Got it. So that content marketing allowed you to network with people who had money, private lenders, other deal finders. If you're wholesaling, people wanting to buy deals. And then, so yeah, and I think I started the same time on Bigger Pockets. I was writing blog articles and saw you on there as well. So I want to talk some about deal finding. It's something that I talk a lot about, but I know is one of your expertises. And it's one of the big complaints everybody's got today is like, oh man, it's so competitive. And I agree, like it is super competitive. But one of the things you do really well and talk about is getting off market, is like talking directly with sellers. Was that something you did from the beginning, or was that something you sort of had to do by necessity, down the road?
Yeah, had to adapt down the road. So first starting out in the single family, and this was in 2013, end of 2013, is the market wasn't what it is now. So it was using bandit signs as a way to, and that's the We Buy a House sign. So was using that, was using direct mail, was purchasing deals off of the MLS, had to submit a lot of offers though. And then also, those were the main channels that were used. And then as the pivot was made to multifamily, many people say that the good deals is you have to go through brokers. We were going through brokers, and this was over the course of about 6 to 8 months. We were going that route, but we were just getting outbid. And this was in 2017 by about 10 to 15%. So we just decided is we can keep going this route, or we can take a pivot. Why not go direct to the owner and beat the broker to the punch? Of course, if a broker has the deal listed, you don't go direct to the owner in that case. But that was the path. Got it.
So lots of this, and I used to call that, or somebody else called that guerrilla marketing. Like, you had the signs. I used to have a sign on my car, we buy houses, and my phone number on it. You used to buy properties that way. And so you just got used to doing like whatever you had to do to market yourself, content marketing, signs, whatever's working. That stuff might not work now, but I assume some of it does. But then you started having to adapt. So you made this transition from single family to multifamily, but you used some of those same skill sets of going directly to an owner to find the deal. And so how did you, like when you started, let's talk about why you made that transition. So go ahead.
One thing I do want to mention quickly is that I still had to figure a lot. And this is one thing, just me being aware, is that I'll take that back. I didn't always have this, but is that I've gotten to a point to where if I'm at A and I need to get to Z, and let's say Z is, I need to go direct to owner, I will, and the channels, you couldn't really do the We Buy House signs or We Buy Apartments, you wouldn't get. So had to essentially figure out, okay, how do I bridge the gap to getting that first deal? I've always, not always again, but I've done a greater job in being able to figure out how to bridge that gap. So I had to figure out a way, adapt, and then pivot. Okay, let's go the route of calling the owner. Okay, what's the process to do that? Okay, you got to pull leads, or you got to do the driving for dollars. Then you got to get them into your system. Okay, now you got to do the skip tracing, which is actually what I did with Chad earlier to get his contact information.
He got my phone number. He called me. He called me. Who's got my cell phone? But he found it. All right. People are going to be calling me now.
Yeah. No, I'm just joking. But I had to learn all of this. And that's what I believe entrepreneurship is about making pivots based upon the marketplace. And if you don't know something, is one, depending on your capital, you can hire someone to bring them in, or you just may have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I love it. That A to Z idea is that Z was for you in the multifamily market. You knew how to market, you knew how to buy properties, but this is a little bit different game. But you just started from the idea, I want to talk to an owner who wants to sell his or her property. How do I do that? Like you started with like the basic kind of fundamental question, and then it sounded like you were just open to how to do that. Like, all right, how do I do that? I don't know. Where are they hanging out? How can I find them? That's really, like, marketing is not super complicated in some ways. It's just like starting with who you want to talk to, and then there's just a bunch of different ways to try to talk to them. That's what like marketing channels are. And you decided with multifamily just to go directly to them. Sounds like you just said, all right, I'm just gonna call them up. I'm just gonna reach out to them and give them a call.
Exactly. And that was also the strengths that I had, is that I was okay with just calling complete stranger. Some people, when you mention that they're like,
cold sweat.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even hesitate. I just thought that, hey, Z, and I want to figure out if this person has a problem to be solved. I'm just going to pick up my phone, which it was an iPhone 2 or maybe 3 at that time. Yeah. Let me pick this up. I've got their contact information. And the first couple of times, it did not go well. but I was willing just to stick at it because I knew where I came from. And that was a driver that I had, is that I don't want to go back to that environment. Another time is I remember being so broke, Chad. This was, well, again, college students are usually broke, but this was in my late 20s, that I had to go to one of my relatives to ask for their food stamp card to actually buy groceries. And I remember being so damn ashamed when I went. This was Kroger on West Washington in Indianapolis, that I went to the Kroger, which is a grocery store, and I went to take out that food stamp card. And nothing against people on government assistance, but I went there and I felt like all eyes were on me. Like everyone turned around, birds started coming in and started looking. I just randomly thought of birds, but I felt so ashamed, and I knew at that moment I never want to be in this position again. So I used those drivers as a way to be able to call a complete stranger.
Yeah, you're kind of contrasting your fears, like fear of having to be back in a place you really don't want to be in versus fear of somebody rejecting you. Which one's worse? The rejection is no problem, right? I mean, that's amazing. I love that technique. So you, and I think I want to, if you don't mind, I want to go like practical on this one, because a lot of people, understand, all right, MLS, go through an agent, or even maybe let me send a direct mail. I'm just going to send them a letter because I don't have to talk to that person and they'll call me. But like calling somebody directly, there's something like people have a block against that. So give me an example. Like let's say like I'm one of your owners in Indianapolis. I've got this 50 unit or 100 unit building you want to buy, and I'm just my property is kind of run down or whatever. It's just in the right location. You get my phone number. You call me up. Like, how do you even start that conversation? I think some people like they just kind of stumble over their tongue. Like, what would you even say now that you've done that a few times?
So yeah, I just keep it simple. There's no NLP, no neuro-linguistic programming. If I have a property nearby, or just say it's the first initial call. Hey, Jim, Sterling here. Always just use their first name. Never use Jim Smith or whatever. That just screams a sell call. Mm-hmm. Hey, Jim, just drove past your property. Wanted to personally reach out to you to see if you consider selling. I'm a buyer. I own several single families or several deals nearby. So I would just keep it short and compact. And you don't have to add the tail end. If you had some credibility, you would add that. But really, that first initial 5 to 7 seconds are critical, and you really want to sound professional and sharp as a tack is what I would say.
Yeah, just the little 5 seconds there, you sounded very confident to me. Like it wasn't you stumbling over your words, but even on a first call, I'm sure there are times when you stumble over your words. But I liked how you used his name. Hey, Jim. It's kind of casual, and then you pretty quickly got to the point of why you were calling.
Yeah, the reason for the call is
it wasn't beating around the bush. It's like, I'm wondering if you'd like to sell your property. Like that was pretty quick. Like so. I love the simplicity of that. It wasn't like super complicated. And what are like the range of responses there? Like if you call 10 people and ask them that question, just so people know, like what are people going to say?
Not interested. That's okay. What you'll get 8 times out of 10. Hey, Chad, I know you get these calls all the time. Tell you what, give me 30 seconds. If you don't like what you hear, I'll hang up on myself. Sound fair?
There you go. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So as mentioned, interested in wanting a person to reach out and see if you consider an offer on your property there. Would you be open to selling?
I'd look at it. Let's talk. I mean, what do you have in mind?
Got it. Yeah. In order for us to provide an educated offer, Chad just had a few additional questions for you. And just one thing to confirm, is this a 50 unit? Yeah,
this is the one over on West Washington Street. Owned it for a while. It's just me and a business partner though, so it's not just me. But yeah, I think we're talking about the same property.
Got it. And do you want to continue with this, Chad, or?
Have you talked to my partner? Because we were actually just talking about this last week. I don't understand how you knew that we were looking to sell, but yeah.
No, Chad. I was saying, do you want to continue? We're out of the role play. Did you want to continue with the role play?
I thought we were really doing the role play. Okay, cool.
No. Okay, yeah. Well, let's go. We can keep rolling with it.
Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling. Like I was kind of giving you. I felt like I was giving you like the generous, like that's the 1 out of 10 who's like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. Let's go to the one where, and you can just tell me what you would say. Like the person who says, no, I'm not interested. Like, is it always just, all right, 5 seconds later, hang up? Or have you had some situation? What can you do with that no? Or is there anything to do with that no, or I'm not interested?
So if you're looking for people who have a problem to be solved. And with that is when you ask someone, okay, Chad, after they've said not interested at the beginning, because they receive a lot of calls. As you was mentioning, you receive a lot of calls. So they may just throw that off as just a red herring just to get you off the phone. And then if they say, yes, I'd be open to hearing it, hearing what you have to say, now you're digging into the fact finding stage to see if there's actually a problem. And during this stages, you're really looking to see if someone says, yeah, give me an offer I can't refuse, or everything's for sale for the right price, those are not going to be the ideal sellers. But if someone just recently, I'll give you a prime example, an 80 unit that bought, this was several years in Louisville, however you want to pronounce it, that I spoke with the son, and through our initial conversation, I asked them that, okay, they mentioned they would be open to hearing an offer. And I just said, okay. And then he just went into, well, my dad, he's getting a little bit older. So you asked the following question, why? Why now is one of the things. And many times they say, you called me. But if they're more of a motivation, they'll say, okay, well, it's due to, in his particular case, his dad threw him into the fire to manage the property. He had no business experience, let alone property management experience. He talked about the property was about 65% occupied for a longer duration of time. His dad was so all these things I heard on that conversation. And then that's when you want to further pursue it, versus if someone says not interested, you further get into the call and they say, yeah, give me an offer I can't refuse, or everything's for sale for the right price. Then it's good to just move on.
Yeah, so you're just kind of listening for signs that there's some kind of, you called it like
triggers.
a trigger, a problem to solve, a pain point, something like
Exactly.
that. And then, I'm thinking back a lot of the calls I made. I think this is so great. Like this is such gold in terms of just like because this is real life. This is what actually happens when you're calling people. Is that motivation was number one. The other thing I would look at, every once in a while, I'd find a property that was just like prime location, just amazing property. Very few people who own those properties are ever motivated in the first place. And so I remember a couple of those where I was like, I don't care what, if they're just saying, I'll talk to you, I would just try to get off the phone and meet with them, or, just kind of look at the property. So it's kind of like a balancing act where it's got to, like most of the time, you got to have a lot of motivation or some kind of motivation to be interested. And but then if it's often, sometimes there's a property that's just, all right, that's just a great property. Let's just, no matter what, let's try to make an offer on that one.
Yeah. And also one thing that usually they still have, but I've had this happen because there really is a thin line. This was a apartment that was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the husband and wife, they had bought the property, they owned it for a while, and she said they would never sell. And then also the husband said that. I called a year later to follow up. They were in a divorce, and someone actually swooped in there and had it under contract. So you have those you have those situations, but I look at all the deals that have acquired, and I look at the common thread between those, that initial conversation, there's been something, and it doesn't have to, like, they're completely like triggers of motivations, but they indicate some interest of selling, and not on the other side of the spectrum that, yeah, give me an offer I can't refuse.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree 100%. So I think we're going to have to wrap our time up, but I want to go full circle here. Like we kind of started with your story talking about, limiting beliefs and mindset and how important it is to have a mindset. We've kind of wrapped this up, and we could talk all day about negotiation. Maybe we can do that on a follow-up call sometime if you're up for it, Sterling.
I'll make it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I just want to like emphasize like on your story, like, you've now bought, I guess, almost 500 units. You own multifamily properties. You've got income coming in. But I just want to remind people, like the steps that, looking back, you don't know where those steps are going to go, but correct me if I'm wrong on some of the common ingredients that seem to be really important, Sterling. There was the self-improvement, just like being willing to, like, your number one asset is your mind, right? That seemed like that was stood out a lot to me.
And you've got to start, if there's nowhere else, and I'm getting a little like, I wouldn't even say emotional. I want to get a bit, is that you've got to start there. That's the foundation. And it's like building a house. You start with the foundation first. And I essentially brainwashed myself with the amount of positive input, because I just, for example, is when took the pivot from single family to multifamily of, okay, go through brokers. Okay, now we got to pivot here. I essentially just said, instead of, okay, this is another barrier to get over, how can I do this? And then figured out how to do it. Okay, I've got to call a complete stranger. Okay, I'll do that. But it just came from brainwashing myself that, okay, well, everything is figure outable. And if you want something, you got to go out there and get it.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't even remember where I learned this, but what you're telling me reminds me of like everybody has problems in life, but like the size of your problems are like relative to how much personal growth you've had. So like somebody who gets a call and has an eviction on a tenant, like if they haven't been working on their own mind, that's going to be like this enormous like size 20 problem, right? But if they had been working on like, all right, problems are going to happen. Let's stay calm. Let's deal with this. What's the opportunity behind this problem? Like that might seem like a 2 problem, instead of a 20 problem. And it's the same way, like a lot of the, negotiating with sellers, that could seem terrifying until you start practicing and learning and getting a mentor and helping you do it. So I appreciate your story of so many lessons here, so many details, real estate investing. But to me, like this looking at your mind as like your number one asset seems to just be a super strength that you've really focused on. And I admire and hope other people take that as a kind of a lesson as well.
Yeah. I would say that's really helped tremendously. And then just also my upbringing too. I've just had this innate fire within me. So that environment, some people actually, and this goes back to the mindset. Some people look at that environment and look at it as a crutch. I decided to look at it a positive light. How can I actually use this as fuel? So it all just comes back to mindset.
Absolutely. So cool. Well, I've got a couple last minute questions just before we close here, Sterling, just for fun. Is there any book that's come to mind for you that you either have recommended a lot or that you just have bought for friends or for people that you think is a good book that people should know about?
I would say Shoe Dog by Phil Knight.
Nice. All right.
Great book.
Have not read that. What's a big takeaway on that one? I'm going to get that one as well.
Hearing about his journey. So he wrote it. It may have had a ghostwriter in, but it's a memoir, and it talks about his journey of starting the company Nike. It's good I enjoy reading autobiographies and watching documentaries of people who have gotten to certain, let's say Michael Jackson, or I'm not getting into anything. I'm just saying those Michael Jackson, Prince, or whoever is on achieving high levels,
right?
And just seeing their story, and a lot of behind the scenes of Michael Jackson, he would stay up so late and just practice. But you don't see that. You just see him on stage in that last final moment.
Yeah, no doubt. Biographies are one of my favorite hobbies too. And I haven't read Shoe Dog. I've got to check it out. And one of my favorite
autobiographies. So the one where they actually write it.
I gotcha. Okay, so that was an autobiography. So that's his story and his words, the things that he thinks are important, as opposed to what somebody else has drawn out. Yeah, big difference.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, great recommendation. The last question is just, I'm going to put links to in the show notes to all of these, but could you let people know where they can follow up with you and hang out with you online? Since you're not on social media, where do they find you? How can they do that?
Well, I'm still on, no, actually I'm not. I have a Facebook and a LinkedIn, but I'm not on it. But okay, you can follow me, not follow me, but Sonder Investment Group. That's my website. So it's just STERLING. SONDR investmentgroup.com. I just spelled my name.
No, yeah, Sterling. Yeah, you can Google Sterling, because I did that too. But Sterling White, and I'll put Sonder Group Investment Group, the website there. And I know you do consulting as well. I don't know if you're actively looking for that, and also check them out. I don't know if your link on Bigger Pockets. You do a lot of great content there.
Yeah.
Not sure if you're doing anything new recently, but there's been a lot of awesome live streams. If you're interested in this negotiation stuff we talked about, I know you've done a ton of content on that
YouTube channel. Yeah, I've got my YouTube channel. You just type in Sterling White Real Estate, and that'll come right up. And yeah, I do a live stream every Friday, as well as I post 2 uploads outside of that. So pretty active on that, as well as the podcast, The Real Estate Experience. But one thing, Chad, I know is that you mentioned earlier, what was one book for you?
Yeah, for me, the biography. Yeah, so I was gonna mention the Warren Buffett biography, and the reason I was going to do that, we talked about kind of mistakes and behind the scenes. I'm a big Warren Buffett fan. A lot of the listeners know that, just from an investment standpoint. But when you read that book, like it made me realize how you put people on pedestals, but like until you realize that read their biography, it like usually brings them down to earth a little bit. It's just there's a lot of like even the successful people. If you're successful in one area, you're probably dysfunctional in another area. I won't give away like all the details there, but like I think whether Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, those are great biographies. Both of those, like just find people you're interested in, read their autobiography, also read their biography. I think you'll not only learn lessons, you also you'll learn some. You'll kind of bring them down to earth a little bit in a way that's approachable that makes probably build your confidence as well, because we're all kind of screwed up in our own way.
I agree, man. Yeah, I agree.
All right, cool. Well, Sterling, this has been fun. Let's do it again, and best of luck with everything you got going on, and we'll be in touch.
I appreciate everyone so much. Go out there and make things happen. Remember, we're all the creators of our destiny. Where we decide to go in life is up to us.
If you'd like more details on today's guest or the resources that we discussed, you can find a link to the show notes for today's episode in the podcast description in your podcast player or in the video description on YouTube. If you're new here, please consider hitting that subscription button in your favorite podcast player so you'll be notified each Monday morning with my newest episode. And if you like the show, there are a few different ways you can support me and to help keep the show going each and every week. The first is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. People read these reviews when they're deciding to listen, and it helps me and the show to get discovered. The second is to subscribe to my email newsletter at coachcarson.com/REI toolkit. New subscribers get my real estate investing toolkit, which includes a closing checklist, a deal worksheet, both of which I use in my own business, and then other goodies that will help you on your journey to financial independence using real estate. You can get it all for free at coachcarson.com/REI toolkit. Third, consider joining one of my online courses, which is where I personally teach and provide tools for you to become a successful real estate investor. There's some courses that are always available, including rental property analysis, real estate deal finder, contract to closing. And then each spring and fall, I open my premier course and community called Real Estate Deal School. It was formerly known as Real Estate Start School. This is more of a boot camp style course where you go through with other students and me live, and I help you gain momentum in buying your next deal. Find details on all these courses at coachcarson.com/courses. I also want to take this time to thank some people behind the scenes who make this podcast possible, including my podcast editor extraordinaire, Michael Wynn, my amazing virtual assistant, Megan Thompson, my wife, Carrie, who helps me behind the scenes with bookkeeping, is also my partner here at Coach Carson, and also listens to my ideas very patiently before I bring them to you here on the podcast. And of course, thank you to all of you, the listeners of this show, who make everything possible. The show exists for you. It exists because of you, and I really appreciate you being here each and every week to listen to another episode. Everything I've shared with you in this episode has been for general education purposes. I've not considered your specific situation or risks. Before buying your own investments, be sure to consult a financial, real estate, and/or a legal professional. Until next time, I'm Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach, and I'm your host for the Real Estate and Financial Independence podcast, which is all about helping you get out of the financial grind so that you can do more of what matters. See you next time.